Hi there, I am Councillor Yemi Adenuga, a councillor in Navan Municipal District, Meath County Council. When I first watched the video of George Floyd's murder in USA by Derek Chauvin, a police officer kneeling on his neck while he was pinned to the ground until the life left him, I cried. I still feel a tightness in my chest when my head replays that moment when George stopped breathing. That could have been anyone's brother, husband, son, father, uncle. I struggle to understand how a person would allow themselves to be consumed by so much hate that they wouldn't flinch at the sound of another person's distressed voice repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe," even when passers-by asked him to get off his neck and check for pulse. I am still shocked at Derek Chauvin's casual disregard for George's life, as he had his hands in his pocket, knee on George's neck, snuffing the life out of that man with his own head held high, well aware that he was being filmed, but yet still in the same position without a single concern as to what the implications of his actions could be. George didn't have to die, but he did. If his death is to be the last straw that has broken racism's back, what happens next in any country that has been at one time or the other said to be racist will determine that. Racism is what it is: a prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism directed against people of a different race based on an absolutely ridiculous belief that one's own race is superior, or, as some might say, due to fear of the unknown. Well, if it is truly fear, those at the receiving end of racism are tired of carrying that invisible burden of other people's fears. Whatever happened to human race? Many would say they're not racist because they have a colored or a migrant friend. This is beyond having a friend from a different race as proof that a person is not racist. This is about taking a stand and making your stand known. It is about making it very clear that you are anti-racist. If you're not for, then make it clear that you're against. People can no longer sit on the fence, not anymore. Racism can take many forms, and it affects thousands of people in Ireland today. There's the obvious everyday racism, where people are called names, abused, harassed. Then there's that kind of racism that is very subtle, that kind of racism that makes it harder for people to get jobs or houses because of the color of their skin or their religion or their nationality. It is systematic, and it has become evident in workplaces and in our everyday society at large. For too long, we have been dancing around this issue too cautiously in Ireland, some always trying to be politically correct, while others even staying completely away from talking about racism for fear of what people might say. Some even have the audacity to drum up dangerous rhetorics that incite hate and put the lives of migrants at risk. Anyone who cannot and will not take a stand clearly and openly against racism in this country is an enabler. In Ireland, many are still asking the pitiful question, is Ireland a racist country? Well, here is some news that might wake us all up to the reality of today's Ireland. Yes, there is racism in Ireland. So says the Life Circle of Hate Crime, a comprehensive report launched in July 2018 by the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. It highlights that the absence of any law against hate crime has led to a policy vacuum in relation to crimes motivated by prejudice in Ireland. A European-wide report also shows Ireland's rate for workplace racism is 33% compared to 22% average in the EU. This particular study involved all 28 of EU's member states. Ireland ranked worse alongside Austria, Finland, and Luxembourg. Ireland has one of the highest rates of racism in workplace within the EU. Not my words, they are findings from the research. Our perspective in Ireland has always been that we're fine, that there is no racism, and that the system we have in place are sufficient to deal with hate crimes. But the reality is that we're not dealing effectively with hate crime and racist crime. We have no legislation against hate crime. In the absence of legislation, the manner in which our justice system addresses hate crime is insufficient. The Gardaí, our police, often well-intended to address the bias element of any of such reported cases, do not have the training, the policies, or even the legislative tools to begin the process. It is very difficult to track hate crime in this country. If we don't wake up to the reality in this country, then we're living under the delusion that everything is okay, and it is not. I am a mother of 4 Black children and a grandmother to 1 Black boy. I think of my children and all the second-generation children born in this country and who are growing up in this country they call home. And I worry about how the impact of this global issue will change and shape their lives. My son asked me, "Mom, will the police be killing Black people in Ireland?" And he's only 12. That for me was very scary, very scary. Ireland is our home. I have lived in this country for 20 years, and I am giving back to my community of Navan that has been good to me and my family. We cannot sit back and watch the unacceptable racist actions of some who cannot accept that Ireland is better with the contribution of everyone, regardless of their race, and we cannot allow them to ruin our lives and the future of our children. If our children cannot feel at home here in Ireland, where they were born and where they're growing up, where are they going to feel at home? They're coming of age. What will be their reality? Is it an island of 1,000 welcomes that does exactly what it says it is and recognizes, respects, and values the contribution of migrants in this country as quickly and as much as it highlights the wrongdoings by migrants? Or is it an island that tells migrants that they're only good for putting their lives on the line as frontline workers to save Irish lives, and not good enough to work high-paid jobs? We have consciously or unconsciously casually accepted racial disparities in Ireland's healthcare system and in our workplace. We have casually accepted that it is okay that migrants are disproportionately dying from COVID-19 and tagged it as one of those things that happens to people with underlying conditions without regard for the fact that they are the ones assigned to the front line of COVID-19 treatments. Our stand as a nation at this crucial time will determine where we stand on the issue of racism. If we're to learn from the recent events in America, we will not wait until this minute eats even deeper into the fiber of our Irish society. We will deal with it now. I appreciate and recognize the kind-hearted members of our Irish community who do not support racism or racist acts in any shape or form. But the reality now is, one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch, and it's given Ireland a bad name out there, which now makes it necessary for anyone who does not support racism to openly stand against it. All across the globe, anyone who is appalled by racism is standing up and speaking out against it. It is time to break the silence and address it constructively and deliberately with a focus on solution rather than finger pointing or playing the blame game. We all have a role to play. This is not about one Black man who was killed in Minneapolis. This is about cracking down on a structure that excludes. What we need to do as a collective is change the action, which in turn changes the story we've been told from time immemorial, that one is superior and the other is inferior. And that will change the system that casually accepts systematic racism. And it will cause a change in the structure. It will abolish a structure that excludes, that helps us build a culture that recognizes, values, and celebrates diversity as we include everyone. No one should be left out or left behind. To achieve this, our authorities play a big role. I therefore call on our Irish government to take a firm stand against racism. I call on our government to condemn the actions of US President Donald Trump in using force to quell anti-racist protests. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous elements who have taken advantage of the pain of peaceful protesters and have gone on a looting spree. Their actions are disgraceful and they should be dealt with by the law. Their actions must not be confused for those of peaceful protesters. People must have the right to protest peacefully, and the use of violence and force must be condemned. A government must act democratically and in the best interest of the people at all times. There are concerns about social distancing in the peaceful protests that have taken place all across the globe, including Ireland, and these concerns are truly justified. Everyone fears that one protest could undo the work that has been done over the past number of weeks that we've been in lockdown. However, the reality for a migrant at the receiving end of racism is that he is battling not one, but two giant pandemics, the COVID-19 and racism. For the migrant, any one of these two is capable of killing him socially, mentally, spiritually, and economically. One of these monsters, racism, has been around for longer than I have lived and has never received the level of global unifying action as the other, the COVID-19, which is a few months old, has received in the last few months. For the world to stand together and to come out in peaceful protest to fight one monster, knowing that they are at risk of another monster, simply shows that majority have had enough of racism. In the same vein, I want to appreciate all well-meaning organizers of rallies and peaceful protests at this time and to implore them to please consider other possible means of protesting, including virtual protests. Any event is possible online these days. Let's not allow one monster to take us before we win the war against another big monster. We need to stay safe as we do this. Our health is our wealth. I call on the Minister for Justice, Minister Charlie Flanagan, to expedite action on the introduction of a legislation on hate crime. While I am aware that a public consultation was launched to update Ireland's law regulating hate speech last year, with a consultation phase which ran up until the 13th of December last year, and a second phase dealing with hate crime is supposed to be published sometime this year, it is obvious that this issue has become one which requires immediate attention and as such should be given priority. No better time to address this issue head on than now. We cannot continue to question the existence of racism in our society. It is here. We must tackle it head on and not wait until we begin to have repeated experiences of what is happening in the US before swift action is taken. We must learn from the mistakes of others. There are no measures to track hate crime in Ireland. While the I report exists, many are unaware of it, and not all those who are aware of it have taken the courage to report an incident. Our justice system needs to empower the Gardaí to appropriately process reported hate crimes through training, policy, and the much needed legislative tools to address hate crime. Workplace racism needs to be addressed. Perhaps having a quota system in place that requires organizations to ensure a certain percentage of their workforce is diverse is a good place to start. In the workplace, racism most often manifests itself through microaggression, which is the modern form of racism. Those indirect, subtle, or even unintentional acts of discrimination against members of a marginalized group. They are embedded in stereotyping and avoidance. It is time to start having those conversations about the impact of stereotyping and how they affect decisions that are made within organizations. The direct provision system in this country is inhumane, with asylum seekers living in overcrowded situations with their children, and many have been trapped in the system for years, awaiting a decision to be made about their application and unable to live a life in this country. The pandemic has made it worse for them, putting their lives in serious danger with outbreaks of coronavirus in direct provision centers across the country. There has been calls for the system to be abolished by many activist groups, and with over 7,700 asylum seekers in direct provision in Ireland, this needs to be prioritized now. It is an unjust system that needs to be replaced with a more humane process that allows for a quick processing of applications, the right to work while awaiting decisions that takes longer than the required period, and the support of the Irish community to integrate. Fighting racism in Ireland is up to you and it's up to me. We can no longer be bystanders. We must take a stand. And so I ask you too to publicly and openly take a stand against racism. Speak out against racism. My name is Councillor Yemi Adenuga. I am a county councillor in Navan Municipal District of Meath County Council, and I stand against racism. I hope you do the same too.